You think they're just bad at texting or scared of commitment? Think again. What looks like relationship anxiety is actually a beautiful orchestrated system of indirect control. The outward fearful avoidant is not running away from connection. They are actively managing you from their ivory tower so they can keep access to you without ever paying the price of admission, vulnerability. It is their nervous system at its finest because it is partly unconscious, but for the receiver of it, very, very real. Let's unmask the exact blueprint of how this happens. Okay, so let's clear out real quick what manipulation actually is, shall we? So manipulation is simply when someone influences another person's emotions, perception or behavior to get a certain outcome without being direct about what they actually want, feel or intend. Also known as this, indirect control. So instead of saying the truth and letting the other person respond freely, the person who manipulates shapes the situation in a way that leads the other person to react in a way that benefits them. And sometimes that is done consciously and sometimes it is automatic. Their nervous system seeking safety. But either way, the core stays the same. Also known as there's an outcome that the person wants and they do not state it directly. So they influence in a different way instead of communicating. That is manipulation. But how does this manifest in someone who craves connection but fears it more than anything else? The answer lies with their internal operating system. So, a very common myth about outward fearful avoidance is that they struggle with connection. But that is simply not true. It's not true because the problem has never been connection itself. They want, actually crave connection. The problem is what the connection does to their system. Closeness for them does not feel good. It also starts to feel exposing. Not at first, but gradually this feeling creeps in. And the higher the stakes get, also known as the more feelings they have, the more their body reads it as, I can lose control here. I can get hurt here. If they leave, I am royally cooked. I am being seen too much right now. And that is where the shift happens, because the truth is that their system is not built to sit in that level of vulnerability for long whatsoever. So instead of staying in it and communicating it directly, it switches into control. And it does not always have to be in a loud or obvious way, but in a small, repeated adjustments to the dynamic, like pulling back when things get too close, coming forward again when distance feels safe again, keeping things just unstable enough to not feel trapped in it. And this is about maintaining the upper hand in the connection, also known as their system does not feel at risk. And this is how they maintain that feeling. Because for the outward fearful avoidant, feeling out of control in connection feels more dangerous than losing the connection itself. They will always choose control over everything. Because that is the only thing they know that soothes them. With that said, instead of fully engaging and risking that exposure, their system manages the connection from the outside, also known as adjusting distance, access and clarity, so they never have to fully sit in it. And they never have to fully say, I don't know what will happen and I cannot control it. And that is where manipulation starts like a byproduct of trying to stay regulated while avoiding direct vulnerability. Before we dive into the specific techniques they use, I want to ask you, have you ever felt this exact shift happen in your relationship? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your experiences, also they're not the greatest ones. And if you want to understand these psychological dynamics deeper, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now that we know why their system reacts this way, let's look at the actual games they play to keep you anchored. It starts with a timeline that doesn't even exist. The classic strategic projection, also known as this is them taking your nervous system and placing it in a timeline that doesn't even effing exist. They talk about later, like trips, plans, how good it could be, how we should do this someday. And it sounds natural because it is wrapped in excitement, curiosity, possibility. But the function is not expression whatsoever, because the function is actually regulation and control. Because the second your brain starts to simulate a future with them, well, your system inside you does something very predictable, and that is your dopamine rises from anticipation. Your oxytocin starts linking them to safety and bonding. Your prefrontal cortex fills in the gaps and builds a coherent story. And now you are not relating to what is actually happening, because now you are relating to what could happen. And that shift is exactly everything. Because now, well, you wait longer, you excuse more, your tolerance changes more, you override your own discomfort because you feel it here. Not because you're naive, as you love to self-blame your own self for. No, it is because your system is now anchored in a reward that hasn't even happened yet. And yes, they know that. And that is the part I do not want to say out loud. But obviously, they know they're not actually building that future. They know they're not aligning their behavior with it. But better believe they're going to keep feeding it. Why? Because it keeps you emotionally invested without requiring them to show up in the present. Also known as no consistency, no actual movement, no real accountability. Simply just enough words to keep the future alive in your head. So while you are truly building something, they are maintaining access practically. And access, that is the goal, always. Not the connection. And access means you are still there. You are still reachable. You have not fully pulled away. So they can come in when it suits them and pull back when it does not. And with that, they never fully lose the connection, and they're also never fully inside it. Basically, future faking is not about dreaming together like it sounds sometimes. Future faking is all about buying time with a future they never intended to pay for. And this shit can look like talking about moving in, having a baby, getting a pet, starting a company. Like real big long-term investments, and not just let's go to Bali someday. It is real stuff that your system anchors in. But what happens when they explicitly tell you they want nothing serious? Yes, their actions scream the exact opposite. Welcome to the ultimate legal loophole of avoidant relationships. This one is so clean on the surface, it is almost respectable. If you have no idea how a nervous system works, because when they say, I do not want anything serious, I do not have intentions right now, sounds like honesty, right? It sounds like transparency, or even better. But what that is? That is preemptive insulation, because what they're actually doing is setting a verbal boundary that their behavior does not follow what's of freaking ever. So their words say, do not attach, but their behavior says, come closer. And your nervous system will always listen to behavior over language, because that's just how humans work. And so what happens when they give attention? Open up just enough. Build emotional intimacy. Create some moments of consistency. And then add physical closeness on top of that. Yeah, well, go figure. Now your system is doing exactly what it is designed to do. Also known as dopamine from engagement, oxytocin from bonding, the insula tracking the growing internal pull, the anterior cingulate cortex flagging the importance of the connection, also known as you attach. And no, this is not because you ignored what they said. It's not your fault at all. You're not Delulu, right? This happens because what they did, well, it freaking contradicted what they said. And behavior, it will always win that conflict. Because that is just how the body works. It cares about impact, not intentions. And the mechanism behind this is literally that they are building connection without committing to its impact. So when the bond inevitably creates expectations, needs, or emotional weight, they do not meet it, but they retreat to the original disclaimer, also known as, I told you from the start, I do not want anything serious. And that line, oh baby, it's not confusion. It's their shield that reframes the entire dynamic as your responsibility. Even though the attachment was co-created and they never took responsibility for their impact. Basically, they get to participate in everything that makes connection feel good, like the closeness, the validation, intimacy, attention, all while being protected, emotionally speaking, from what connection actually required. So that means no accountability, no consistency, no follow-through, and just a standing flipping excuse they can activate the second it costs him something, anything. And that is why it works so well, because it lets them have access to you while they avoid the consequences of what access naturally creates. You're building a bond, but they are maintaining a loophole. You are attached and they are covered up by excuses. Simply said, they used you and they will never admit that because, imagine what that does to their image. Exactly. And they will never sit in the impact because that requires them to stop getting what they want. Is there any valid excuse for this? None. Level of immaturity? Infinity. So now, when you finally gather the courage to call them out on this behavior, or any behavior, the tables turn instantly. Prepare yourself for the defense pivot that leaves you questioning your own sanity. The classic control over where reality is allowed to exist, also known as when you come in with something real, something that had impact, something your body already clocked before your brain even puts words to it, when you come with that, bam! In that moment, there are only two options for them, and these are, they stay in that reality or they remove it. And guess what? The guilt flip. That is how they remove it. And yes, they are going to choose to remove it. And it's not by denying facts directly, like you might think, but by making you unsafe to continue by saying things like, you are too much, you are sensitive, This feels like pressure. Why are you making such a big deal out of nothing? And that, it is registered as a threat signal in your system, because what your nervous system hears is, if I keep going, I risk losing the connection. And that hits deep, especially as an anxiously attached or an inward fearful avoidant. What happens is, your amygdala, the threat center, fires. Your insula tightens your body. The interior cingulate cortex, it flags social rejection, fear. So now you're not standing in your point anymore. Your system is spiraling. So what do? That's it. You are managing risks. Risk. And that is the real mechanism. Because the truth is that they do not argue the issue. They make the cost of holding the issue higher than dropping it. So your system does the math real fast. Is being right worth losing the connection? And your system unconsciously answered, absolutely the hell not. So you soften, backtrack, and you start explaining yourself like you are trying to get some type of permission to trust yourself, your instincts. And now, well, look at the position shift. You came in naming impact, but now you are standing there defending your tone, your delivery, your reaction. Meanwhile, they never saw you. They never took accountability or anything a safe person would have done in that moment. And that is the reality of it. So remember that this is not miscommunication, okay? You're not overreacting. This is what is called pressure relocation. So known as, they take the discomfort that belongs to them and place it back into your body so you carry it. And once you are busy carrying that, they are free. Free from accountability. Free from sitting in the impact. Free from having to change anything. And the most uncomfortable part, they feel justified while doing it. Because in their system, everything genuinely feels like pressure and it genuinely feels like too much. So the flip does not feel like manipulation from the inside for them. It feels like self-protection. But obviously the outcome is still the same. And you cannot do anything to change this, not without sacrificing yourself at least. Because sure, if you cry, pressure builds and they double down. But if you're holding back impact to please the person who hurt you, that is self-erasure. And the safe person should never make you self-erase just to keep your safety. In all this, your reality gets destabilized and their behavior stays untouched. And the conversation ends with you holding both the original hurt and the new or stacked weight of, maybe it is me. Now let's look at controlled vulnerability, the classic rationed exposure where they let you see just enough of them to create connection, but never enough to lose control over how they are experienced. So what is the difference? Well, real vulnerability is not selective in that way, because real vulnerability risks impact and it risks being seen in ways we cannot manage. But this, it does not. Why? Because this is curated. Like they share things and they open up and they might even go deep. But notice the pattern. It happens on their terms, in their timing, in their dosage. And the moment it starts shifting from I am expressing to you're actually seeing me, something changes, because being seen means you now can read them and you can now predict them and you can form expectations, you can hold them accountable. And this is where their system starts flagging threat, as we know. So what do? They cut it off. They redirect. They joke it away. They suddenly get tired or bored. They pick a fight or pull back just enough to reset distance, but not fully disconnect, but just enough to regain control. And this is where it messes so heavily with you, because your system actually did feel something real, something break. Also known as, you felt the dopamine from the openness, oxytocin from the bonding, a sense of, we are getting somewhere. So when it suddenly gets limited or pulled back, your body does not register it as neutral. Okay, we're fine. It registers it as inconsistency. And inconsistency increases the attachment. So now you lean in more and you try to meet them where they're at again. And you wait for that level of closeness to come back. But it never stabilizes because it was never meant to. That's why the relationship felt like always chaos. Because the closeness is being managed, not lived in. And that is the core of it. Because they're not using this vulnerability to connect whatsoever. They're using vulnerability to regulate and to create closeness when they want it. And to pull back when it starts costing them control. So you experience moments of depth, but no continuity. And you feel close, but not safe. Because safety requires stability. And stability requires them to stay visible. And not just appear and disappear on command. And the uncomfortable truth at the bottom of all is this. They're not actually dealing with what they feel. They are managing the environment so they do not have to. They control the pacing, the depth, the access. So they never have to sit fully in exposure, responsibility. And definitely not impact. And that control does not stay neutral because it gets paid for by the person on the other side, also known as you. Because while they are relying on control, you are adapting to inconsistency and trying to build something inside a connection that is being actively contained from ever becoming real. It's a never-ending loop. So why go through all this trouble? Why can't they just say what they mean? The answer isn't that they're evil geniuses. It's actually much more fragile than that. They do not do these things because they're bored, nor because it's fun. And it's not some manipulation mastermind plan either. They do it because direct honesty would cost them something they do not know how to handle. And that is the truth. Like saying things straight. I'm getting attached and that scares me. I do not have the capacity for what is happening here. This is affecting me more than I want to. I have no freaking idea how to hold this. I'm feeling anxious every day. Because this would immediately remove control. And once control drops, now they can be seen. Now they can be exposed. They can be rejected. They can lose the connection without being able to manage it. And that is what their system is built to avoid at all costs. So instead of dealing with that risk directly, it finds ways to manage the situation indirectly. And that is where all these techniques come in, because they're all doing the same job, which is keeping the connection within a range that feels manageable, tolerable. Not too close, because that feels unsafe. Not fully gone, because that feels unsafe too. So their system constantly adjusts, also known as push a little when it feels okay, and then pull back when it feels like too much, and create confusion so nothing actually locks in stability. Avoid clarity so nothing can collapse fully. It is literally constant management, because being fully in means they can lose it fully. And for the outward fearful avoidant, losing control hits harder than losing the person every single time. So everything becomes about, how do I stay in this without ever fully risking it? And the answer their system lands on consistently is that they do not engage directly, and they control the dynamic instead, one foot out the door. And that is exactly what all those behaviors are, also known as strategies to stay connected without ever having to be fully in the connection. But let's be entirely real for a second. At what point does an automatic nervous system response cross the line into active choice and a total lack of accountability? None of this is unconscious enough to excuse it. You know that, right? Because at some point they see the pattern and they notice how they are keeping people in limbo. They notice how they are benefiting from their attachment, and they notice they are avoiding impact while still taking connection. And they do not stop. And that is the piece they hate to admit, because once they see it and continue anyway, then it is no longer just their nervous system or mechanisms anymore, right? Right? It is a strategy they are choosing, and they do not get to hide behind, this is just who I am, while actively shaping dynamics that hurt people and using people and hiding behind biological excuses. Sure, their triggers explain their reaction, but they do not justify their behavior, especially when it's a pattern. And if their way of handling you is controlling access instead of offering presence, or avoid clarity and impact, all while taking intimacy and protecting themselves by shifting the impact onto someone else, then that is not confusion, because that is avoidance with a cost, and someone else is paying it. And their phrase, I told them I do not want anything serious, won't save them when their impact is building attachment. So the question is not, why am I like this? They already know. The question is, are they going to keep using it or take responsibility for it? Because there is no neutral version of this, okay? They're either interrupting the pattern or they are continuing it. And that is a choice. And that is abuse. And that is their choice. And if they so dearly want to choose control and image every time, they should just go and hug a mannequin instead. Someone should buy them one. Because connection requires presence. And what they are choosing is control. And that is not the same thing. When you are on the receiving end of these constant adjustments and emotional curation, it does something devastating to your mind. That is what it actually looks like to unravel. The impact on you, who endured this, it is pure effing destabilization. One moment you feel seen, chosen, wanted. Next moment you feel dropped, distanced, replaceable. And there is no clean transition whatsoever. No explanation that actually maps to the shift. So your brain does what it's built to do, and it starts solving. Your hippocampus pulls past moments. Your prefrontal cortex tries to build a story. Your anterior cingulate cortex keeps flagging something is off. And your system locks onto one question: what changed? And when there's no consistent answer externally, it turns inward. Why? Well, it has to, because your brain needs causality to feel safe. And now the question inside you is, what did I do? And that is where the damage actually starts getting really ugly. Because the moment you start reorganizing yourself to stabilize something that is unstable, you begin monitoring how they speak, how they react, how much they show, how much you ask for. And you start editing yourself and trying to match a version that keeps moving. And over time, that erodes your own baseline. And your internal signals stop feeling reliable. Because every time your body said, this feels off, it got overridden. And every time you felt hurt, it got minimized or redirected. You're overreacting. So now your system learns the internal signals are not trustworthy anymore. And external behavior must be tracked instead. And that is exactly how your self-trust got replaced with hypervigilance. And that is a brutal trait you never even signed up for. You're leaving yourself. And that is a chilling reality. Because now, you're no longer relating from yourself, because you are now relating from the prediction, also known as watching them, tracking patterns, trying to anticipate the next shift. And this is where the loops locks tightly in, because the inconsistency is not neutral, because it is intermittent reinforcement, an unpredictable reward. One of the strongest conditioning mechanisms in the human brain, because dopamine, it does not spike from a stable reward. It spikes from an uncertain reward. It spikes from gambling. So when the connection drops, your stress increases and uncertainty rises. And when it comes back every tiny, briefly bit, relief hits hard. And that relief is what bonded you, but not just to them, but to the return of them. So now the attachment is no longer just about the connection, it is about escaping the discomfort created by their absence, their silent treatment, their blocking. So you have confusion, and then comes distance, then a small return, then relief, so reward, rinse and repeat. That loop wires fast, and it is really, really incredibly hard to break. And it's not because you're weak, okay? Do not dare for a single millisecond to think that. It is hard because your nervous system has literally been trained to chase resolution in a system that does not provide it. And while that is happening, self-doubt grows, because your experience, that is reality. But acknowledgement is inconsistent or missing. So your brain tries to resolve the mismatch. Am I overthinking? Is this abuse? Am I too sensitive? Am I asking for too much? When the actual issue is simpler and harsher, and that is that you are in a dynamic where clarity is repeatedly removed. So you stay longer than you normally would, but not out of stupidity, but out of investment. You have already built something internally, you have felt the good moments, and your system has evidence that it can feel right, the first phase. So you keep trying to get back to that phase, waiting for stability inside something that is structurally inconsistent. And that waiting costs you something infinitely valuable, and that is you. Because this does not just affect how you see them. More important, it changes how you see yourself. Your threshold shifts, your boundaries blur, your sense of this is okay versus this is not okay, it weakens. And when it ends, when you are left with not one clear wound, it is fragmentation, also known as a series of moments that never fully make sense, so you struggle to even explain what exactly hurt, because there is no single event to point it. All you have is just a pattern of reality not holding over and over and over, and someone that made you stop trusting yourself even more. That is the impact. Erosion, slow, repetitive, and internal until you do not recognize your own baselines anymore. And as an inward fearful avoidant, maybe you're gonna blame yourself for exactly freaking everything, because that is how you learn to stay safe growing up. Except that is not true though. It is not your fault. It is just an old lie that feels safer to believe. It feels safer to believe in than facing that unfamiliarity of the truth, that it was never you, not back then and not now.